The night sky over the Persian Gulf is no longer just a canvas for stars. Tonight, it flickers with the distant glow of missile trails, the low thrum of drone engines, and the occasional flash of interceptors lighting up the horizon like sudden, violent lightning. This is the face of a conflict that has already reshaped the map of power in the Middle East, and it is only beginning to reveal its full, terrifying depth. I am Michel Barrow, and this is the unfolding story of a war that no one truly wanted, but everyone now fears may redefine our century. What began as targeted strikes has spiraled into a month-long confrontation between the United States, Israel, and the Islamic Republic of Iran. A clash of wills, weapons, and ancient grievances playing out across land, sea, and cyberspace. Thousands lie dead. Global energy markets teeter on the edge of chaos, and the world watches, breath held, as the narrowest choke point on Earth holds the fate of economies in its grip. According to multiple verified international news outlets, including reports from the New York Times and NPR in late March 2026, the conflict crossed the one-month threshold with no clear end in sight. Iranian forces, led by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, have maintained an iron grip on the Strait of Hormuz, effectively throttling the flow of nearly one-fifth of the planet's daily oil supply. Tankers idle by the dozens, their crews tense, their owners calculating ruinous insurance premiums. Friendly nations, India, China, Russia, Pakistan, have been granted limited passage, but the majority of global shipping remains paralyzed by fear of Iranian retaliation. This is not mere posturing. On the ground and at sea, the human cost mounts daily. Gulf states report near constant interceptions of Iranian missiles and drones. Just days ago, an Iranian strike hit the giant Al Salmi oil tanker near Dubai port, igniting a fierce blaze whose smoke still lingers over the Arabian Sea. Kuwait Petroleum Corporation has issued stark warnings of potential environmental catastrophe, an oil spill that could poison coastlines for years. These are not abstract numbers on a briefing slide. These are lives, livelihoods, and ecosystems hanging in the balance. Yet the most chilling escalation may not come from the skies or the waves, but from the boardrooms and server farms of Silicon Valley. In a statement released on Tuesday, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps publicly declared that leading American technology giants, Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and more than a dozen others, have now been placed on a target list. The IRGC accuses these companies of complicity in terrorist plots and targeted assassinations against Iranian leadership through their advanced AI, cloud computing, and surveillance technologies. According to reporting by Politico, The Wall Street Journal, and South China Morning Post, the guards warned that starting from 8 p.m. Tehran time on April 1st, their facilities and operations in the Middle East could face destruction in direct retaliation for any further killings of Iranian figures. This threat marks a dangerous new frontier, the weaponization of economic interdependence. Tech campuses thousands of miles away, once symbols of innovation and connectivity, are suddenly being framed as legitimate military targets in a hot war. The implications stretch far beyond the Gulf. If Iranian proxies or cyber units act on these warnings, the ripple effects could disrupt everything from smartphone supply chains to global cloud infrastructure. It is a stark reminder that in modern conflict, the battlefield has no borders. At the center of this storm stands U.S. President Donald Trump, whose public statements have oscillated between raw aggression and cautious diplomacy, in a manner that has left allies and adversaries alike struggling to read the true intent. Over the weekend, Trump openly mused about the possibility of American forces taking the oil from Iran, floating the idea of seizing control of Kharg Island, the critical hub through which the vast majority of Iranian crude exports once flowed. In interviews and social media posts, he has spoken of identified targets numbering in the thousands and hinted at broader operations if Tehran does not bend. Simultaneously, Trump has claimed progress on a proposed 15-point ceasefire framework, suggesting that Iran has accepted most of its terms through back-channel communications facilitated by intermediaries, including Pakistan. According to accounts in outlets such as Al Jazeera and Reuters, Iran has firmly denied the existence of direct negotiations, dismissing the claims as attempts to manipulate oil markets and project strength. Yet intelligence sources and diplomatic leaks indicate that quiet conversations continue, a delicate dance of denial and deniability that has become the hallmark of this phase of the conflict. This duality, the rhetoric of take the oil versus the outreach for a deal, reflects deeper strategic calculations in Washington. On one hand, the Trump administration appears prepared to escalate. Reports confirm the deployment of additional U.S. forces to the region, including thousands of Marines and elements of the storied 82nd Airborne Division. The amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli has already delivered over 3,500 troops and sailors, bolstering CENTCOM's forward presence. These moves signal readiness for potential ground or amphibious operations, perhaps aimed at securing key maritime assets or pressuring Iran's leadership directly. On the other hand, the economic pain at home is mounting. American drivers are seeing gasoline prices climb past $4 a gallon in many areas, a direct consequence of the Hormuz disruption. Trump has voiced frustration with allies who he believes are not pulling their weight, bluntly telling them in public remarks to go get your own oil. The United States, as the world's top producer, stands to benefit in some respects from higher prices. But the broader risk of inflation, recession fears, and supply chain shocks weighs heavily on decision-makers. Oil markets tell their own urgent story. Since the outbreak of hostilities in late February 2026, Brent crude has surged dramatically, at times climbing more than 50%, with recent peaks pushing toward $116 to $118 per barrel, according to energy analysts tracking the crisis. West Texas Intermediate has settled in the low 100s, levels not seen consistently since 2022. The effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz has removed millions of barrels per day from global circulation, far outstripping any compensatory releases from strategic reserves or increased output elsewhere. Goldman Sachs and other major forecasters have repeatedly revised their projections upward, warning that prolonged disruption could drive prices even higher, with some scenarios envisioning Brent testing records beyond $150 if the choke point remains contested for weeks more. This is not simply an energy crisis. It is a strategic one. The Strait of Hormuz is more than a shipping lane. It is the jugular of the global economy. Iran's ability to threaten or partially close it has handed Tehran a powerful asymmetric lever, one that even the mightiest naval forces cannot neutralize instantly without risking wider escalation. Iranian military spokesmen have vowed that any attempt to forcibly reopen the strait by U.S. or allied forces would trigger overwhelming retaliation, including strikes on regional infrastructure and potentially broader attacks across the Gulf. Meanwhile, the conflict's reach is expanding. Over the weekend, Iran-backed Houthi forces in Yemen joined the fray more actively, launching ballistic missiles toward Israeli targets, the first such strike since the war began. Israel intercepted the threats, but the move raises alarms about a multi-front war. The Houthis have proven their capacity to harass shipping in the Red Sea and Bab al-Mandab Strait in the past. If they now fully align their operations with Tehran's objectives, a second critical maritime artery could come under sustained pressure, compounding the global supply shock. Across the region, Gulf nations find themselves caught in the crossfire. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and others report intercepting waves of Iranian projectiles. Civilian areas and energy facilities have come under threat. The attack on the Al Salmi tanker near Dubai is only the latest incident in a pattern of retaliation that has already damaged aluminum smelters and other industrial sites. These nations, long wary of Iranian influence, now face the immediate reality of missiles arcing overhead and the long-term specter of environmental and economic devastation. As the sun rises once more over these troubled waters, the fundamental question hangs heavier than ever. Will this war be allowed to spiral into a wider regional conflagration, or can back-channel talks, military pressure, and economic reality force a path toward de-escalation? President Trump has extended deadlines and spoken of winding down operations, even as he maintains threats against Iranian power plants and oil infrastructure. Iran's leadership, hardened by decades of sanctions and isolation, shows no sign of immediate capitulation. The coming days will test the resolve of all parties. Will American and Israeli strikes continue to target high-value Iranian assets? Will Tehran unleash further unconventional responses, from cyber operations to proxy activations? And how will the global community, from Beijing and Moscow to Brussels and New Delhi, position itself as the fallout spreads? This conflict is no longer contained. It is rewriting the rules of engagement in the 21st century, where oil, technology, proxies, and great power interests collide with unprecedented speed and consequence. The stakes could not be higher. Lives are being lost. Economies are bleeding, and the narrow strait that has carried the lifeblood of modern industry now carries the seeds of potential catastrophe. As the first chapter of this crisis closes, and the next unfolds with even greater uncertainty, one truth becomes clear. The decisions made in the coming hours and days will echo far beyond the Persian Gulf, shaping energy security, technological trust, and the fragile balance of global power for years to come.